One mistake that a lot of women make when heading into a divorce is not having a very realistic expectation about their future financial situation. There's a lot to learn in the divorce process, and this is a very state-specific area of the law, so it's incredibly important that you learn what the laws are in your state so that you can figure out how you'll be protected for your financial future. One thing you're going to need to find out is, what is the alimony or spousal maintenance situation in your state? In order to protect your financial future and having a realistic idea of what's going to be possible for you in the future, you need to start doing your homework now about spousal maintenance, alimony, and also how your state views property distribution and debt distribution. So in order to protect your financial future and to give you the opportunity to get a realistic expectation about what's possible for you in the future and what your lifestyle is going to be in the future, don't hide your head in the sand and don't think, well, I have this lifestyle now, so I should be able to live the same lifestyle after my divorce that I've been living before my divorce. Your life is going to be dramatically different, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be worse. In fact, most people say about a year after their divorce that they're much happier and things are much better for them in a lot of ways. But if you don't protect your financial future now during your divorce process, you're going to have a hard time making up for that in the future. So do your homework, find out what the alimony spousal maintenance laws are in your state, understand how assets and debts are distributed in your state, and be prepared to go into your divorce well educated, standing in your own power and knowing what's best for you. Don't make the mistake of having an unrealistic financial expectation in your divorce. Here's a big mistake that women make heading into divorce: not having a full and complete picture of their finances. And I mean everything. This is absolutely not the time for you to sit down with your husband and have him lay out the bank statements and the stock accounts and the retirement accounts on the kitchen table and say, well, honey, here's what we have, let's divide it up. He may be the most honest guy in the world and he might exactly be telling you the full and complete truth. But you need to be responsible for finding out all of that information yourself. So take the stuff that he gives you and take a look at it, but then it's your responsibility to find out how much money is in the bank. You need to contact the bank. You need to find out where you have bank accounts. You need to find out where you might have 401ks and IRAs and pensions. You need to find out what your house is worth. You need to find out what your cars are worth. You need to find out what any other assets that you might have are worth. Here's a giant mistake that a lot of women make, is that they don't realize that their business, maybe it's a landscaping business or a hair salon, all of those businesses have values, and you need to find out what the value of that business is before you can reach a fair and equitable, which is the way courts talk, distribution of your assets. So if you're going to settle your own case, you need to know what your assets are, what your debts are. You need to know what all your credit card debt is. You know how much you owe on your mortgage. You need to basically rifle through that file cabinet that you probably have in your office that you may have been avoiding because nobody really wants to face the condition of their finances. But this is the time to get it all out, put it all out alone, without any help from anybody else at the beginning, and just take a look and see what you've got and see what you don't know. And then when you go to see a lawyer, if you choose to have a lawyer, you'll be very well prepared with all of your information that'll make it much easier for your lawyer to give you good advice. So don't make the mistake of failing to have a full picture of your financial situation when you're heading into your divorce. One mistake that I see as a lawyer all the time that women make in the divorce process is relying on friends and family members and people without any legal or financial advice or background to give them advice. Don't rely on friends and family members to give you legal and financial advice. You know, even if you have an uncle who's a lawyer, he might not be a family law lawyer. He might be a corporate lawyer, or maybe he's a personal injury lawyer. That doesn't mean that he understands the divorce process in your state. And maybe you have a sister who got a divorce, but she lives in California, and maybe you live in Illinois. Well, what California does for divorces is completely different than what Illinois does, or Kentucky, or Florida, or New York. Some states are similar, but a lot of states are really different. And what's really, really different is spousal maintenance and alimony. Sort of, it's the same thing, but sometimes they call it spousal maintenance or alimony. That's different in every state. And property distribution is different in every state. And just because your next door neighbor got 10 years of alimony at a high number, and someone's telling you you're not going to get that amount of alimony, you need to listen to your legal advisors on that, not your friends and family members, because you don't really know the ins and outs of their divorce situation. I've had clients come to me and tell me, well, my friend down the street had X and such happen in her divorce. And you know, divorces are public records, so you actually can go look and see what happened in that divorce. And 9 times out of 10, it's not what your client told you. So don't make the mistake of letting your friends and family members tell you what's fair in your divorce. You need to get some good legal advice to process your divorce and to get as best result as you can to protect your financial future and protect your children's future. When entering into a financial settlement in your divorce, one mistake that a lot of women make is focusing on what they have now and what they want now instead of looking to their financial future. Big mistake is sometimes women get really attached to the family home and they really want to keep the house. And maybe that's a great decision for some women, and maybe it's a really bad decision for other women. Because there's tax ramifications to keeping a house and selling a house. And here's something a lot of people don't think about. If you keep your house as part of the divorce, and maybe you find over time that you can't really afford that house and the mortgage payments are just too much for you, but you've been awarded the house, then you decide you have to sell the house, guess who's paying the real estate fee on that house? That would be you. So for example, let's say you have a house that's worth $300,000 and you owe $200,000. So there's $100,000 worth of equity in that house. So that's one asset you have on your spreadsheet is $100,000 in the house. And let's just say that you guys have $100,000 worth of retirement assets. And let's say you really want to keep the house. And so you take the house for $100,000 and then your husband takes the retirement for $100,000. And then you can't keep the house because you can't afford it. Now you have to pay the real estate agent to sell a $300,000 house. And you're going to pay them a little less than $30,000. That comes out of that $100,000. So your $100,000 is now closer to high 60s or $70,000 a couple years later. And your husband has the retirement account that might have actually increased in value. So don't make the mistake of focusing on the present because you really want the house and not taking into consideration your financial future. This is your divorce. It's your unique situation. You need to focus on the future financially and do everything you can do to educate yourself, read books, read articles, and protect your financial future by not focusing on the present, but focusing on the future. One mistake that lawyers see a lot in situations where people are trying to manage and settle their own divorce is that a lot of people don't consider the tax ramifications of a particular asset. This isn't something that a lawyer can even really help you with, and it's pretty hard for most of us to figure this out on their own. So if you have assets that are substantial at all, you need to speak with a CPA, a certified public accountant, even if you just buy an hour of his or her time. Sit down with someone and take a look at the assets that you would have accumulated and that you've got to figure out what they all are. So get a very good idea of what your assets are, get a very good idea of what your debts are, and then when you try to figure out what assets you want to take in the divorce, get some consultation about the tax ramifications of those assets. Because if you don't think about that, you can have a really unpleasant surprise when later on you go to sell an asset and find out that you're going to be stuck with a big tax bill that you didn't consider, while your husband might have gotten an asset that didn't have that kind of a tax bill attached to it. So it's a huge mistake in a lot of divorces that people don't consider the tax ramifications of the assets that they want in their divorce. Don't make that mistake. After a divorce, financial situations for most women are drastically different. If you've been out of the workforce, or maybe have been working part-time because you have a family, a big mistake that a lot of women make in the divorce process is not understanding how long it's going to take for them to get back into the workforce, or to enter the workforce in the first place, and start getting up to speed so that they can take care of themselves financially. A lot of women don't understand that they need to get training, and they need to understand exactly what it's going to take for them to be able to move forward and take care of themselves in the future. It's a really good idea if you fall into the category of unemployed, never employed, part-time employed, or just don't have a good solid career, as part of your divorce process, think carefully about getting a vocational assessment on yourself. It might be expensive and you might not be able to afford a full-fledged, several $1,000 vocational assessment, but there are ways to get yourself assessed for the future by using resources available at most community colleges and community centers. So if you're someone who's not in a position to take care of yourself financially, and you think that you might qualify for alimony or spousal maintenance, you need to be able to understand how much you need for how long and how you're going to get yourself up to be able to take care of yourself. Because if you end up in court or in a mediation or a settlement situation, and you want to be able to come up with your plan and say, look, if I can get this much spousal maintenance or alimony, I feel like I can get myself to a point where I'm going to be able to take care of myself in 1 or 2 or 4 years from now. And it's always a better argument to have something practical as your plan to help you get a good settlement, but more importantly, so that you can take care of yourself. Because as scary as it is, heading from being into a 1 or 2 income family with someone who's been taking care of the finances, if that hasn't been you, then you need to start thinking about your financial future, and you need to think about what you're going to do to take care of yourself and your family. And that requires a decent job with a decent salary with benefits if possible. So as part of your vocational assessment, you want to take a look and see what are possibilities for you. So don't fall into the trap of making the assumption in the part of your divorce that you're going to be able to get yourself a good job in another 6 months or a year, when in fact you might need to get educated, and you might need to take some training or get a certificate to get yourself a really good job to take care of yourself and your children in the future. So don't make the mistake of not understanding how long that process is going to take and the kind of support and help you might need over the course of the next few years. Here's a big mistake that women make in the divorce process, and this is really, really hard one. Don't make the mistake of making really important life decisions that have lifetime financial implications for you and implications for your children. Don't make those kinds of decisions in a time of huge emotional upheaval. I know it sounds crazy and like, well, that sounds simpler than it is, but the truth of the matter is, the hardest part about being in a divorce is it's hugely emotional. You're in all kinds of turmoil. Your life has been turned upside down. Your kids' lives have been turned upside down. And yet, you need to start making some really serious business decisions for yourself. And you need to do that in a level-headed and business-like manner. So you almost have to be 2 people. You're going to have your emotional side that you need to totally take care of, and hopefully you've got really good support of friends and family. And we talk a lot about getting a divorce team around yourself, people that can really support you. You need to come up with kind of a vision for your divorce. That's sort of in the middle here. And then you need to find a way to put the emotions aside to make business decisions for yourself and your financial future. And that means you've got to get all of your assets figured out. You've got to figure out what your debts are. You've got to come up with your budget. You've got to figure out what's best for your children. You have to let go of the idea that you're going to have your children with you every single day. In fact, they're going to be going over to their dad's house probably a significant amount of the time. It's hard to let go of that. It's hard to move forward. And whatever brought you to the point that you need to get a divorce is hugely emotional and really overwhelming, and puts you in this terrifying position of feeling alone and feeling complete uncertainty about your future, and feeling like you're not exactly sure who you can trust and who you can rely on. But at the same time, you've got to find some way to kind of dig really deep inside yourself and get level-headed enough to make some really important, really serious decisions. So don't make the mistake of making those types of decisions in a state of huge emotional turmoil. Handle the emotions, get a counselor, work with your friends, and I really don't mean to minimize it at all, but there has to be a separation about the times that you're emotional and the times that you're sitting down alone at your kitchen table or in your lawyer's office looking at all those bank records and all those retirement accounts and trying to figure out if you can really afford to keep the house. So don't make the mistake of over-emotional times getting mixed in with the clear-headed, business-minded person that you need to be as part of your divorce process.